Hello Divination, thanks for joining us in this tutorial where I'll be showing you how to creatively use the new Divi built-in border settings. So this tutorial contains two parts, and in the first part we're going to handle 7 of the 13 examples. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Before we dive into the tutorial, let's scroll through the different examples that I'll be showing you how to recreate. So this is the first one. And then we have the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, the sixth one, and the last one. So instead of focusing on each and every module settings, we're going to help you recreate the bigger picture. So I have already added the modules, but we're going to show you how to recreate the borders. And for this first row over here, you will need the following column structure. And then you can open the row settings, go to the background subcategory, and start by adding a white background color to your row. Then scroll down and give your second column a color as well. So I have mentioned all of these details in the blog posts, which you can find in the description below. So then go to the design tab, open the sizing subcategory, and enable the custom gutter width option and make sure that the value is 1. Then open the spacing subcategory and add some custom padding, 0 pixels to each one of the options that is mentioned. And then add 60 pixels to the top and bottom custom padding of the first and second column, and add 40 pixels to the right and the left side. So you can do the same thing for the second column as well. All right. And now we're going to go over to the fun part, and that's the border subcategory. And the first thing that you will need to do is add some rounded corners to it. And that's 16 pixels for each one of the corners. And then we're just going to the box shadow subcategory and help you create that depth you need by adding a box shadow that's pretty subtle. All right. And make sure that it's an outer shadow in this case. And here you go. So then we're going to the second example, and for this example you'll need 2 image modules, one containing the phone screenshot and one containing the tablet screenshot. So we're going to open the settings of the first image module and immediately go to the design tab and make sure that our width is 251 pixels. And then we're going to the border subcategory and add 30 pixels to each one of the corners. Next, we're going to scroll down and add a top border style to this image module of 50 pixels and select the following color code as the color. And we're going to do the same thing for the bottom border style as well, and we're going to use the same color. And the left and right side need the same color, but instead of having 50 pixels, it'll need 10 pixels for the border width. Here we go. And then we can go over to the box shadow subcategory and add the following box shadow to our image module. So again, you can find all of the details in the blog post, which I have mentioned in the description below, but you can also follow the settings on the screen. All right, and once that is done, course, make sure that it's an auto shadow. But once that is done, we have our mobile version. So now we're going to do almost the same thing to the tablet image module. And again, we're going to start with the border subcategory and add 30 pixels to each one of the corners. And then we're going to add a top border style of 15 pixels using the same color code as we did within the mobile screenshot. And we're going to use 15 pixels for the bottom as well. And then we're going to use 50 pixels for the left and the right side. Then we'll open the box shadow subcategory and make use of the same box shadow as we did for the mobile screenshot. Change the color and make sure that it's an outer shadow as well. So here we have the result. Now let's move on to the next example. So we have a couple of rows over here, and you can choose the column structure for each one of the rows according to your needs. But in this case, I chose that one. So next I'm going to open the settings of my row and open the background subcategory and add the following color code to my background. Then I'll move on to the design tab and I'll make sure that I add 0 pixels to the top and bottom because that will help remove the space between all of the rows. Then I'll open the border subcategory. Since this is the first row, we're going to add a border width of 16 pixels to the top, the left, and the right side, and we're going to make sure that the bottom border width is 0 pixels. All right. Then we can move on to the next rows, which are the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. And all of these rows will need the same settings, which is, first of all, the same background color as we used for the first row. And then you can move on to the design tab and add 0 pixels to the top and bottom margin, again to make sure that the space between the rows is gone. Then open the border subcategory and we'll only need a border style for the left and the right side for these rows. So we're going to make sure that the top is 0 and the bottom is 0 as well. And we're going to add 16 pixels to the right and left side. Of course, you can also choose the border color that you want. Here we go. And we're going to do the same thing for the next 2 rows. So I'll go through that really quick. And these 2 rows are actually the part where you can add as many rows as you want because they are the same. So you can make this as long as you want or as short as you want. Border style, again, only to the right and the left side. 16 pixels and a color of choice. You can find all of the details in the blog post, which I have mentioned in the description below. And I'll have to do that one more time before we go to the last row, which has slightly different settings. Again, the custom margin and the left and right border style. Here we go. So you can clone these rows as many times as you want and place other content in them. And I'll show you really quick. By just cloning the last row that we modified, you'll see that the border style will remain part of the bigger picture and will blend in well. So I'm just going to delete those and move on to the last row. And the first thing I'm going to do again is add the background color. So I'm going to choose this orange color, then go to the design tab and add 0 pixels again to the top and bottom margin. And then go to the border subcategory and make the border apply to the left, the right, and the bottom border styles. So again, we're going to choose 16 pixels and a color of choice, but we're going to make sure that the top has 0 pixels. So you can choose the column structure for each one of the rows according to your needs, and this helps you take advantage of the different column structures. And here we have the result. Now let's move on to the next example. So for this example, we'll need a row with 1 column, and you'll need to add an accordion module and add all of the accordion items in advance, because we'll need to make the modifications to each one of the items separately. So we're going to start off by opening the spacing subcategory of each one of the items and add 0 pixels to the bottom margin, 30 pixels to the top padding, 30 pixels to the bottom padding, and 0 pixels to the left padding. Then we'll open the border subcategory and add a top border of 6 pixels. And we're going to repeat the same steps for all of the other accordion items. So the spacing and then the top border of 6 pixels in a color of choice. This also allows you to play around with the different colors depending on the accordion item. So you don't have to choose the same color each time you modify an accordion item. You can simply choose different colors that will make your frequently asked questions section pop. All right, we have the next one. Again, the spacing category. And the top border. And then we'll just need to do the same for the last one, and we'll be done. Here it is. Now let's continue to the next example, which is the following. And the first thing you will need to do after adding a new section is choose a gradient background for it or a regular background. And it could be in combination with a background image as well. Then move on to the design tab, open the spacing subcategory and add 5% to the top, bottom, and left margin. Then continue by adding 60 pixels to the top and bottom padding and 5% to the right padding. And then go to the tablet version and add 0 pixels to the right padding and 12% to the top padding of the mobile version and 0 pixels to the right and again 12% to the bottom and 6% to the left side. All right. So then you can open the border subcategory, and then you can add 240 pixels to the left top corner and 240 pixels to the bottom left corner as well, and leave the other two at 0. So now we'll change the blurb module and begin by adding a white background color to the blurb module, and switch over to the design tab, open the spacing subcategory, and make sure that the following custom padding applies to the blurb module. Then open the sizing subcategory and make sure that the content width is 550 pixels. Now we can go over to the border subcategory and add 6 pixels to each one of the corners. And last but not least, we're going to add a box shadow with the following settings. Again, you can find all of these settings mentioned in the blog post, which you can find in the description below. But I'm going to add this box shadow really quick. And here I go. So now I can clone this blurb module and place it in the other column as well. And here we go. We have the first section completed. And if we want to do the same thing for the effect on the other side, we'll simply open that row and go to the design tab, and we'll need some other spacing settings. So we're going to add 5% to the top right and bottom. Then we're going to add 60 pixels to the top padding, 0 pixels to the right, again 60 pixels to the bottom padding, and 5% to the left padding. And then we'll move on to the tablet spacing, and we'll need to keep the 60 pixels for the top padding, add 0 pixels to the right padding, keep 60 pixels for the bottom padding, and 0 pixels for the left padding. And last but not least, the mobile version needs 12% for the top, 6% for the right side, 12% for the bottom, and 0 pixels for the left side. And we're going to add 240 pixels to the right top corner and 240 pixels to the bottom right corner as well. So we're going to go to our sections that we've created, and the only thing that's left to do is clone our blurb module as many times as needed and place them in the row. And here we have the result. So let's go to the next example, and for this example we're using a specialty section, and you'll need the following column structure for that. Then you can go ahead and choose 2 columns for this row over here. And then you can open the row settings, go to the sizing subcategory and make sure that you enable gutter width and use a value of 1. Then scroll down, open the spacing subcategory and make sure that the custom padding for each one of the options is 0 pixels. Then you can open the border subcategory and add 10 pixels to each one of the corners. And last but not least, we're going to add a box shadow to the row as well. And we're using an outer shadow. Of course, you can choose the color that you would like the box shadow to have and just save the settings. So now we're going to make some modifications to the blurb module. First of all, we're going to add a white background color to it. Then we'll move on to the design tab. Open the sizing subcategory and make sure that our image width is 64 pixels and our content width 1100 pixels. Then we'll open the spacing subcategory and add 30 pixels to each one of the custom padding options. And then we're going to add a border style to the left side as well. We're using a border width of 8 pixels and a color of choice. So you'll have to make those modifications to each one of the blurb modules, but of course you can create one of the blurb modules and then just clone it and make some modifications afterwards is the easiest thing to do. So I'm just cloning all of the blurb modules. Of course, you'll have to change the content. And another thing that you'll have to change is the border style color. So you can do that for each one of the blurb modules to distinguish them from each other, as you can see on the screen right now. Here we go. All right. So now let's scroll down to our last example, which is the following. We're going to start off by adding some settings to the section. Let's go to the design tab and we're going to use some custom padding to the top and bottom, 240 pixels. And then we'll open the border subcategory. And add a border width of 26 pixels to all of the options. And we're going to add a box shadow as well. And we're going to save these options. So then we're going to place a row within this section and it has one column. So let's go to the row settings immediately. Open the border subcategory and apply a border style to the left and right border. And we'll need 16 pixels and a color of choice. And we're also going to open the text module within the column of that row and make sure that the width is 90% and center orientation and add 40 pixels to each one of the custom padding options. Then move on to the border subcategory and add a border to each one of the options. And we'll use a border width of 16 pixels and a border color that is slightly transparent, which will help seeing the background through it a little bit. So let's scroll through all of the different examples that we've helped you recreate. And here we have it. Well, that was all for this video. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and make sure that you subscribe to our social media channels so you'll get a notification every time we have something new for you. Thanks again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.